Okay, Mike, so we're just going to get started in a second. Do a brief intro. Welcome everybody to PhillyPoSH for September. Tonight we have Mike F. Robbins, who is a senior systems engineer with about 20 years of professional experience as an IT pro. Mike recently won as the advanced winner of the scripting games. He's also a co-founder of the Mississippi PowerShell user group, and we're glad to have him tonight to talk to us about Cmdlets. So with that, Mike, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Okay, since I can't see everybody in the room, I'm just going to make the assumption that maybe we have some people that have not queried WMI with either VBScript or PowerShell. So we only have a couple of PowerPoint slides. We have the beginning slide, which you're seeing now, and we'll have a slide at the very end, because I'm guessing that nobody showed up to learn how to do PowerPoint. Okay, and I'm actually going to attempt to type most of this in because it's pretty much one-liners. And WMI actually stands for Windows Management Instrumentation, and you can use WQL to query WMI, and what WQL is, it's WMI query language, and it uses a syntax that's similar to SQL. So if you're familiar with SQL, it'll look similar, and it has a subset of the SQL language though, so you don't have all the commands in WQL. And let's see. Let me give you a definition of what WMI is real quick. Windows Management Instrumentation, or WMI, is the Microsoft implementation of web-based enterprise management, or WEBM, which is an industry initiative to develop a standard technology for accessing management information in the enterprise. So it's a way of retrieving information about hardware and software. And even before PowerShell, you could query WMI with, say, VBScript. And I'm actually going to show you a VBScript example once we get started with actually doing some querying. And one thing to realize with WMI is that it's a completely separate technology from PowerShell. But PowerShell provides what I'll call an interface in the form of commandlets to be able to access WMI. And you guys let me know if the font is too small, and I can certainly increase it.
I think it looks good, right? Yeah, it looks good, Mike.
Okay, so I'm going to show you the commandlets that actually we're going to use get command. And we're just going to say noun WMI star. So these are the commandlets that has been available. I know they were available in PowerShell version 2. I believe at least some of them were available in PowerShell version 1. And they communicate via DCOM. So if you say get WMI object, then you're actually and provide a computer name to a remote computer. It's communicating across DCOM. Now you can use PowerShell remoting and put your get WMI object inside of that. But if you use the native computer name parameter, and I'll show you this, it's going to be using DCOM, and of course in newer operating systems, the firewall actually blocks DCOM. So with the newer operating systems, that's one of the things that the CIM commandlets are really good about, is they default to using WSMan or PowerShell remoting. And you can also use DCOM with getSim instance, which is basically the newer version of get WMI object. So I want to show you the CIM commandlets as well. There's more commandlets in the CIM module. So as you can see on the screen, there's probably twice as many commandlets there in the CIM module, and there are some reasons for that, and they'll become more apparent. So just so we can keep this up near the top of the screen because it's probably easier for you to see, I'll go ahead and clear the screen. And this time my test environment is completely PowerShell version 4. So I'm running, this is Windows 8.1 and my servers are running 2012 R2. Everything I'm going to show you does work in PowerShell version 3 though, but I will point out a few things in PowerShell version 4 that are different. And one of these is, you'll notice there's a couple of new CIM related commandlets they're actually functions, and they're at the very top there that are in the desired state configuration module. And there's no help available for those commandlets yet, so I'm not exactly sure what those do, but just be aware that there's more to come with CIM. So you'll see even more and more with newer versions of PowerShell. And it's my understanding that they're not really putting a whole lot of time into the old WMI commandlets that communicate over DCOM. They haven't officially said they're deprecated yet, but that's kind of how I feel about them, that they're deprecated. So what I want to do now, I actually want to show you a VB script example. So we'll just go to the command prompt. Let's see if we can blow this font up a little bit as well. And we're not going to be at the command prompt very much, so this will be fine. So I'm just going to run C script because W script is the default VB script where you'll get a pop-up instead of at the command line, and I want it to be at the command line. So what this VB script does, it tells you the type of processor in the machine, the speed, and the status. And now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to open up that VB script. And what I want to show you, if there's tons of VB scripts out there on the internet. And one of the things we always say with PowerShell is use the built-in help. Well, unfortunately, since WMI is a separate technology, you can find help on the commandlets for accessing WMI, but you won't find very much help on WMI itself inside of PowerShell. So when you start searching the internet, you may come across an example that's VB script. And if you do, one of the really neat things is there'll be a query in it. And you can take that query and use it in PowerShell. So what we'll do, we'll just copy this. And all the other stuff is VB script stuff, so we don't care about anything else. So what we'll do, we'll actually use the older commandlet, and it has a query parameter. And if we do nothing else but just paste that query in, then that query runs in PowerShell. So I've actually done this where I'll be searching for something, I want something specific, and I can't find any PowerShell information, but I'll find a VB script example, and it may be 200 lines of VB script because they're doing all this formatting and all that, but all I want is the query. So you'll notice you have these system properties that have like 2 underscores at the beginning of them, and you don't get those with the get CmInstance commandlets. But one of the ways you can get rid of those in PowerShell, you could do a select star, and I'll tell you what. Okay. Oh yeah. And this is the ISE works. The good thing about getting errors is errors are the real world, and a lot of people would just clear the screen and say, "Yeah, you didn't see that." But I want you to know why we got this error. It's because the ISE works a little bit differently, and if we take the same command and run it at the console, it'll actually work the way that I want it to work. So we'll paste the same command in, we'll pipe it, and it gives me the double less than sign, so I'm at a nested prompt. And what I want to do, I actually want to pipe it to select, and that's an alias for select object. So I'm going to say all the properties, and this is actually one of the only times I ever use the exclude property parameter, because what I want to exclude is a underscore star. So it's going to give me all the properties, it's set for those system properties with WMI object, with get WMI object. Now, it did give me a few additional things, but what I want to show you is I can actually, and I'll tell you what, let's jump back over to the ISC and type this in like we would a script, since we're going to be piping to something. So if we put that same command in, and we don't need, we actually, the only thing we really want is the beginning of this command. So let's just clear our results and let's run it. So that's what we got with the get WMI object. We can actually take this same command and we can use get CIM and we can run the same command. And you'll notice the formatting is a little bit better. But this is actually exactly the same results that we, if we send that to format list, those are exactly the same results that we got from the VB script. So, and VB script was another one of those technologies that WMI is totally separate from VB script, but VB script gave you a method for accessing WMI. Okay, let's make sure I'm on track. And what you, there is a class, and it's because I've got query in there, but there's a class name parameter with get CIM. And you'll notice the class is actually here in our query. So we'll just cut that out of there. So if we ran just this first line, then it's going to retrieve the information for the Win32 processor class. Well, if you don't want to use the WMI query language and you want to use more of the PowerShell language to accomplish the same thing, there's a filter parameter, and this still somewhat uses the WMI query language. And actually, looking at this one, there's actually no filter on this one. They were just doing a select, so I'm going to use a different example. One of the other things that I really like about this get CIM instance or the CIM commandlets is tabbed expansion of the classes and namespaces. So I can hit tab and it'll tab expand the class. So I actually do want to filter this. Well, I'll show you what it looks like before we filter it, and then we'll filter it. So it gave me all the hard drives in this machine. So we have an A, a C, and a Z. But I only want to see the fixed disk or the hard drives. So I'll filter that, and I can see the drive type for C is 3. So I'll do drive type, and here is where you're not using the -EQ for equal with the like you will with PowerShell syntax, because you are using the WMI equal sign. And I believe I can just say 3. There's certain times you have to put single quotes around the value, but since it's a integer, I think I can actually do it this way. But let's find out if this works. So it did work. You know, and that's staying with the best practices instead of using where object. Now you could do the same thing with where object, but it's going to grab all the drives. And so this is where you would use the drive type EQ3. Let's see if that works. Okay, so we get the same information, and for such a, you know, we only had 3 items total, so you won't see much difference in the performance. But if you were querying hundreds of remote machines, then there's a big difference. And you can use this for remote machines. So if I do computer name, I have a domain controller named DC01. And we'll use the one that is the best practices instead of that one. So DC01. So there's the hard drive on DC01. and it does accept an array of strings, and if you did a help or get help on getSim instance, you would see that. So we have another machine called SQL01. We have another one called Web01. So, and you'll notice that you end up with a synthetic computer name property called PS computer name that tells you which computer each of the results are from. And these are all VMs. You can see the size of the hard drive is exactly the same on all of them, but the free disk space it varies just a little bit. So, you know, one of the things is, how do you figure out what classes are out there with WMI? That's one of the things I hear a lot. And I know this is going to scroll off the screen, and let's see, actually. So if we do get WMI object, and there's a list parameter, and this will return every single class for the default CIM-v2 namespace. And I can see, I'm going to try not to run too many queries that return like a million things like that one did, because I'm sure that there's some latency involved in that. Now typically what I will do is, if I'm going to run something like that, there's a lot of these perfmon related classes that, unless you're looking for performance information, you'll never use those. In addition to those, there's a lot of classes that begin with CIM. 99% of the time, the ones you're looking for are going to be the Win32 underscore. So typically what I would do is I would say Win32 underscore star, and I would actually go ahead and use where, because there's not a way that I'm aware of to filter left on this, because I want to say it's not like Win32 underscore perf star. So this will filter out the ones that begin with CIM, and also the ones that begin with Win32 underscore perf. So let's just clear our results and run that. So that returns a few less rows. So when you try to run the same query with the CIM commandlets, there is a little bit of difference. There's a dedicated commandlet for looking up this sort of information, and it's called getSim class. And getSim class does not have a list parameter. It actually uses class name, just like you would with getWMI object and getSim instance. And the name is going to be CIM class name, I believe, and we'll find out. So, and we didn't get our performance counter ones, so we'll just scroll back up. We didn't get any, and so the name is CIM class name. So this is the query you would use to accomplish the same thing with the CIM commandlets. Now, one of the things you might want to do, and I kind of mentioned this in the synopsis for this session, is maybe you've got some remote servers and you want the serial number, that you want to find out if they're still in warranty or something like that. So how do I find out what classes have a serial number property? Well, there just so happens to be a property name parameter, and you can just say serial number. So when I run that, that's all the classes in the default namespace that have a serial number property. And the two, I've worked with this a good bit, the two that you would normally want would either be the Win32 BIOS or the Win32 system enclosure. And we'll just go ahead and query those. It's as good a time as any to start querying this stuff. So we'll do a get sim instance class name, and the class we want is the Win32 BIOS, and there's not a lot of data that it's going to return, so we'll just go ahead and I'll tell you what, we'll grab this one here while we're there as well. We'll run this. And since this is a virtual machine, it's got a really strange looking serial number. But if this was, say, a Dell computer, you would actually, this would be the service tag that's on the label on the computer. This would be the motherboard serial number. So if you ever had the motherboard replaced and they didn't change the serial number, then it's going to be wrong. So you could run get CmInstance, class name, and you'll notice you can get the serial number as well from here, and it is the same number from the other class. Do we have any questions so far? Okay. I actually have a VM that I want to show you that's running Windows 2008. It's not the R2 version. It's like the newest version of a x86 server that you can get. So, and I want to show you on this that PowerShell is not installed. This machine is, and you'll notice up here near where it says provide computer name and domain, this machine is freshly built. I changed the name of it. It's not even a member of this domain. Nothing's been done to it. So if I did add features, of course the bits for PowerShell version 1 are on the hard drive, but you'll notice like 5 or 6 items up from the bottom of this list is Windows PowerShell. So PowerShell is not enabled. The only thing that has been done is I went into the firewall settings and I allowed WMI, which is the third item from the bottom. That's it. And this, what I'm about to show you, would work on a Windows 2000 or higher server, and the Windows 2000 SP2 or higher. And one other thing I do want to show you, I can lay my hands on it pretty quick. I'll just go ahead and show you this part. I'm going to build a few sim sessions. So I'm going to do new, and a sim session, think of it like if you know what a PS session is with PowerShell remoting, you create a session and then you can communicate with a remote computer across one session instead of using like invoke command, where you create a connection, you establish it and tear it down for every command that you run to the machine. So that's what a sim session is to the sim commandlets. But with PowerShell remoting, of course, you have to have PowerShell remoting enabled on the remote machine, and either it's got to be in your domain so you can use Kerberos authentication, or you have to hack your trusted host list. Well, nothing's been added to the trusted host list on this machine. So if I do a new sim session, and to start with, I'll do computer name, I'll do DC01, I'll do Web01 and SQL01, because those are all newer servers. This is going to use WSMan, and the authentication I'm logged in with will work fine with those. So we'll just go ahead and run that. And you'll notice that I have 3 sessions now to those 3 computers. Really no magic there. But where the magic is, I'm going to do a new sim session, and I'm going to do it to computer name Win 2008. And I can actually use the session option, and you can pre-create your DCOM option, or you can just create it in a one-liner, and I'm just going to create it in a one-liner because I'm only going to use it for one machine. So I'm going to do a new sim session option, and actually it's protocol is what we want, and the protocol of course is DCOM, and we do need credential. And I tell you what, since we're running off the screen, you know, one of the natural places to break this line at, and I'll separate these so you'll know what, these are the 2 lines we're working with. And the username is, and password, well, the username's the same, but the password's different on that particular machine, and I did that on purpose. So we're going to establish a DCOM connection to that Windows 2008 machine that does not even have PowerShell installed. And the machine is called Win 2008, and it's just the administrator account. So you'll notice we just established a DCOM connection to that machine with no PowerShell remoting on, no PowerShell period on the other end. So what I'll do now is we'll just go ahead and run get sim session, and we'll show those sessions. So those are the 4 sessions we have. And to make it a little bit easier, we'll store those sessions in a variable. And we'll just run that line. So now if we looked at what's in the variable, it's just the 4 sessions. Because what we're going to do is we're going to do get sim instance, and we're going to do sim session, and we're going to give it that sim session, and we're going to query a class, and we'll just query the Win32BIOS on all those machines. And I want to make sure it does come out in the table, just so it'll be a little bit cleaner. And you'll notice the 3 that are WSMan came back really quick, and then the one that's 2008 took a little bit longer. But we've queried all 4 of those machines in one line, and 3 of them went across WSMan, and 1 went across DCOM, and the one with DCOM does not even have PowerShell installed. And I do have something I want to show you. Okay, it's on the list here somewhere. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Okay, so and one of the really neat things, let me show you this. Let's go back to our virtual machine, and so we're going to go to the command prompt, and we're going to do a shutdown /force/reboot. So it's going to shut down in less than a minute, and we'll leave that alone for a second, and we'll come back to it. So now, how do you make changes, or how do you run a method with get sim instance? Well, the way you do that, get sim instance, and we're actually going to do class name, and we're going to do Win32 process. We're going to start a process, and we're going to say filter. Oh, there it went. Let's find out if our VM is rebooting yet. Our VM's rebooting. You see that? So it's just now booting up. So I don't know if you saw that, but it just came up. So before I run this command, let's go back and let's do a get sim session. So you'll notice we still have this one that's got DCOM to that machine, even though it rebooted. We haven't done anything but reboot the machine. So and actually we don't want to do a get sim session. We want to do a get sim instance. And we're going to do a sim session, just like we did before. We're going to do, this is the bad thing about deleting what you did. Class, Win32_BIOS, format, table. It should work. We'll run that. You'll notice we got our results for our Windows 2000 machine. So that sim session, and from my research, the reading I've done, it says that normally DCOM does not reconnect, but the WSMan ones do. But you notice that I haven't been able to prove that correct. So I don't know if it's something new in PowerShell version 4 that reconnects those decom sessions, or if what I read during my research was incorrect. But anyway, you know, if you, even with newer versions of PowerShell, you would end up with a disconnected PowerShell remoting session, and you would have to reconnect it. So that's, you know, one of the things I really like about the CIM commandlets is I hear a lot of people, you know, they've got maybe some old 2003 machines, 2008, they've got 2008 R2, they got 2012, and they always want to know, you know, okay, I've got this variation of machines, some's got PowerShell, some may have PowerShell version 2, and some may have version 3, and how can I do something against, run something against all those machines the same way? And generally, there's not one answer. Generally, it's like, well, you can do it this way on that machine, that version of machine, and if it has PowerShell installed, you can do it this other way, and if it's newer, you can do it this other way. But with the CIM sessions and being able to run it across DCOM and across WSMan, you can run things from, like I said, Windows 2000, Service Pack 2 or higher. You can run the DCOM CIM sessions against those. And you actually have to have PowerShell version 3. I want to show you one thing. So if I did test WSMan, and I did computer name, let's just do DC01, the stack version has to be version 3 to use WSMan with the CIM sessions. So even if you have Windows 2008 R2 that's got PowerShell version 2 on it, then it's still going to have to use DCOM because the stack version's got version 3. And I've seen this work on occasion against a version 2, but I haven't, everything I've read says it's got to be a version 3, and I even saw Jeff Hicks write like a command to determine, hey, if it's version 2, do a DCOM session, if it's a version 3, do a WSMan session. And what I did, actually, during the scripting games, I wrote something similar to that, and then in another event, I wrote one where it would just try the WSMan and fail, and then in the catch, I put the DCOM statement in the catch. So because it was almost just as fast, try it and let it fail, and then just do DCOM if it failed. I see Alexander is in the chat room now, and Alexander is like the remoting guru. So anyway, back to what we were doing before. We'll just get rid of this so we don't get confused. And it looks like we've got about 25 minutes left for my presentation. So we're actually going to do name equal notepad.exe. So let's see what happens when we run that. Okay, so what we can do is, and we'll put this on a separate line to make it easier to view for you guys. We're going to do an invoke CIM method. Let's see, I've gotten lost where I was at. Oh, hold on. Okay, so get some instant. Okay, so that, let's just clear that, or run that one more time just to make sure I got what I thought I was getting. Oh, I'll tell you what, I actually want to back up. Got ahead of myself there. So if I do a get CIM instance class name, and we're going to look at the Win32 NT event. And like I said, I can hit tab on that because it's one that's kind of tough to type in. Filter. We're going to filter this on log file name of application. And this is something I actually did in a presentation I did for the Mississippi PowerShell user group. earlier this year. So we can see there's actually about 1,500 records in this Windows event log. And what we can do, we're actually going to do an invoke CIM method. We're going to do name. And after see that tab expanded to namespace, but that's not what I want. I want name of backup event log. So there are scenarios where your tab expansion does not work properly. And what we're going to do, we're going to back up this event log. And I don't know if that exists. We'll just create it real quick. So we'll put it in temp, application backup, and we could call this anything. And we're actually going to call it an EVTX file, and there's a reason for that. So let's find out if this works or if we generate an error. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to do the get one event commandlet. We're going to use the get one event, and this is probably a parameter you don't use very often, the path. So we're actually going to read that file to make sure that it is valid, and we're just going to do max events of 3 to see if we can read something out of that file. So you can see, yeah, we can read something out of that file. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the same command, and we'll just get rid of this part of it. And we are going to clear that event log. And the name that we want is, or the parameter we want is name, clear. And of course, you can always do a what if. I tell people that what if will save your job. So it's going to tell us what it's going to do. Performing the operation clear on that target. So let's just go ahead and do that. Clear didn't work. Pretty sure it's clear. Let me show you how you figure out what the clear. Huh. It's kind of weird that the what if actually looked like it was going to work and the other did not. Huh. Kind of strange. And I just thought of something. I'm going to create a new tab because we're going to come back to that. One of the other differences with get WMI object is you can actually run this as a job. So you can run that as a job. So that's running as a job now. So if I do a get job, and you can see the job completed, and then I can actually pipe my get job to receive job, since that's the only job I have. I can't type. So that's the data that was retrieved. So if you have something that's long running, you know that's a benefit. And let's just remove that job as well, because we're gonna run something similar for get CIM instance. And of course, if we went back and ran the get job again, there would be no jobs because we removed the job. Well, if you do the same thing with get CIM instance. Let me show you this in PowerShell version 4. One thing I noticed, because like class is an alias in get CIM instance to class name, and in PowerShell version 4 they put an alias in to get WMI object, because I just did a tab on there. I want to find out. I saw this earlier, but I didn't test it. So let's just test this and see if it works, and it does work. So they went back and put an alias of class name in getWMI object, and I'm guessing it's for people who maybe start out using getSim instance and they're used to class name, and then they go back and have to use getWMI object for some reason. But class name for getWMI object, that particular parameter does not exist in PowerShell version, in previous versions of PowerShell prior to version 4. Okay, so we will run the same command, and the problem is there is no as job. But you can usually run most things as a job, even though it doesn't have a parameter to run as a job. And there's a positional parameter here of script block. I've found sometimes that, let's just go ahead and press enter here, there is one of script block. So if we run this command, you'll notice you received the information about the job running just like the getWMI object. So we'll do the get job again. That one completed as well. Pipe it to receive job. Same data. And we'll remove that job as well in case we decide to do something with jobs later. And we'll just verify that that's gone, and it is. Okay. You know, you can certainly with the getWMI object. I'm actually going to bring up the console at this point because I want to run getWMI object against a remote computer of SQL 01, which is a Windows 2012 R2 server. And it's pretty much, I mean, it's got SQL on it, but the firewall other than for SQL has not been changed. So if I try to run this command that we've been working with, and of course I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to take 30 seconds or so, and it's going to time out, and that's the reason I did it in another window, because that's trying to run across DCOM, and DCOM is not enabled by default on newer operating systems. So that's one of the reasons you would want to use the getSim instance. But the other thing you could do to get around that, you could certainly do invoke command, and you could run it against computer name SQL 01, and then you could run that same command, getWMI object class Win32 BIOS. I believe that's all right. So and if you had a PS session created, you could use the session to run that across instead of creating a connection and tearing it down just for that little bit of data. And we'll go back over here and see if our other command timed out yet. And it did. And see, it says the RPC server is unavailable. Now, one thing I will tell you on a domain controller, the WMI firewall exception is actually enabled. So if we ran this against our domain controller, which the defaults have not been changed on, it will run. You can use DCOM against a domain controller by default. And I actually want to jump back to the getSim class commandlet real quick. I don't think I showed this earlier. One thing you can do is you can actually query remote machines, and let's just go ahead and do that. And I think I did show you querying remote machines, but there's one thing in particular I wanted to show. So computer name web01 namespace, and let's see if I have this namespace. Okay, so it's the namespace I'm looking for is root. And here, I can't tab expand this because what I'm going to query on that machine is not installed locally on my computer. So for the tabbed expansion to work, it has to be on the local computer because I have IIS and I have the WMI compatibility installed on the IIS server. So the class name, I'm just going to say IIS app, like if I wanted something out of the application pool. So let's run that and see if I've got that typed in right, and it looks like I do. So I could query my IIS settings remotely from that web server. So you can query different namespaces besides just the default CIM v2 namespace. But in order, like I said, in order for the tabbed expansion to work, you actually have to have that installed locally. And if you want, if you wanted to be able to tab expand it, you could do a enter PS session to that machine. Now, one thing also is, and I'm going to do this in the other window. Something I'm going to do is going to take a few minutes. So if I did a get command, and I wanted parameter name sim session. So I want to find all the commandlets. So I've got like 10 commandlets maybe there that accept sim sessions. If I do a get module list available and I import all my modules, and that's going to take a few minutes, and we're going to come back and run that same command again, you would not believe how many commandlets accept sim sessions. And they're actually functions. They're functions that are built by the PowerShell team on top of WMI. And you can do a lot with that without knowing that you're working with WMI. And you can use the sim sessions with those. And I'm going to show you an example of those. So I think we may have, let's see if we still have I'll tell you what. We'll create a new sim session. We'll just put it in $A. $A equal new sim session, computer name DC01, because I want something specific to this one. Okay, so what I'm going to do a get DHCP scope. I'll show you the scope on this DHCP server. I can use the sim session that I just created. So I can see that my DHCP scope on my domain controller is 192.168.29.0. If I wanted to know volume information for that same server, I can use the same sim session. And I may have said this already, but I'm not creating and tearing down a session each time. So if you're building an advanced function, for example, and you're going to query multiple WMI classes, if you ran that across a sim session, then you would only be making it's more than one call, but you only have the overhead of setting that connection up one time and tearing it down one time. So now we're going to go back to our other window. We're just going to go ahead and clear the screen. And you saw there was like 10 commands before. Well, this time when I run this, even running this command is going to take a minute because it's unbelievable how many commandlets can use sim sessions. And these are what I call the free commandlets that you get with Windows 8 and Server 2012 or higher. These are the ones you don't, all these functions are the ones that you don't get with Windows 7 and Server 2008 R2 if you put PowerShell version 3 on them. So yeah, it's unbelievable. So I want to tell you how many this is. So it's 1,092 commandlets that you can use sim sessions with, and that's why it's so important for me to tell people about this, because there's only going to, in the future, there's only going to be more and more commandlets. And I know when I started working with PowerShell, I'm not a VB script guy, I mean, my VB script, what I did in the VB script days was I was the dangerous script copy and paster. So I knew enough about VB script to be able to find a script on the internet and look at it and know that it wasn't going to do something malicious. So when I started doing PowerShell, WMI was actually one of the more difficult things. It just seemed, because you couldn't get a lot of help, as I kind of talked about earlier. You can't get a lot of help on WMI itself from within PowerShell. So let's see. The other things, I want to show you this. So if I do get CmInstance, and we're about to wrap up here. And if there's any questions, you guys can go ahead and ask or type them in the chat. I'm going to do class name. And what we want is the Win32 operating system. And we're actually going to do a select on last boot up time. So you notice that? You see how pretty that date is? That it's wonderful. It's human readable. Okay, so let's change this to get WMI object. And this is why I like PowerShell version 4. Another reason, like I was talking about with the class name, I don't have to change anything. I can just execute this command. Now who can tell me on the last results, when was the last reboot of this machine? So it's the answer's right above it, but if you were working with WMI, then you've got to like convert this. So and there is a method built in for converting that. And one of the ways that I know just off the top of my head.
So Mike, we did have a question.
Sure.
And it was if you were to connect through CIM or WMI using either WSMan or DCOM, and you're connecting as the credential that you provide, correct?
If you don't provide a credential, it uses the credentials you're running PowerShell as, but if you do, you can give it a credential parameter. And you can actually do that. You can actually do that. I'm glad whoever asked that actually asked that, because get WMI object has a credential parameter, and get CmInstance does not. So if you want to connect to, if you want to use the CIM commandlets with alternate credentials, you have to create a CIM session first, and that's how you get your credential parameter.
Does that answer it? Yep. Okay.
So you get the CIM instance and then you create the new CIM session.
No, you create the session first. Yeah.
That's right. And when you create the session, and it can be, I mean, you don't have to use DCOM to use the credential parameter. I mean, those are mutually exclusive. So if I did like computer name, DC01, I could still do credential and do a get credential. And let's just get rid of all this other. And then I could come down here and do a new CIM session, and I could do it to computer name, and I can do it to Win 2008. And the other way, you can do option equal new CIM session option protocol. I think it's protocol DCOM. And then when you come down here, you would do I got the wrong commandlet. New CIM session. So you would do the session option, and then you could just do put your variable in there, and then you could do credential. and you could do a get credential on that one. So if you don't specify these credentials, it's going to run as the credentials that this PowerShell session is running as. But you can actually use different credentials for this connection and for this connection. And then you can actually run a command against both of those. So if you said $A equals, and you came down here and you said $B equals, then you could come down here and do a get sim instance and sim session. You can actually do a $A, a $B. And let's just validate one thing. Let's do a help on get sim instance. When in doubt, do help. Sim instance. Let's see. I'm almost positive that that accepts more than one string. I don't see exactly what I'm looking for here, but I'm almost positive. But one of the ways that I get around putting two variables here a lot of times is I'll just take one variable, like $C, and do a get sim instant or sim session. And that way it'll put all this. I won't even have to define these with variables. And then I can just come down here, and this is kind of what I did earlier. I'll do a $C, and then when and that should be get sim instance sim session, and it would be class like this. So those commands would work, but hopefully haven't confused you even more. So we're make sure we don't have any more questions, and then I'll pull up the final slide.
The idea was that if I created a session over there and ran it, I wanted to have that one so I could like connect to a UNC path.
Oh, okay. So like the second hop thing. Yeah. So I think that what the question is, Mike, is that the person wants to run. They want to create a session to a second host, and then they want to be able to talk to a UNC path and pull files or a SQL resource or something, which would get into more like remoting, correct?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, let's do something real quick. Let's see. Now, that's a good question. I think I made $A already has something in it. Yeah, so I have a session in $A. Let's do this. So that's on DC01. Let's do a get. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna I won't answer that right here, but I'm gonna answer that on my blog. That gives me a good idea for a blog article.
Fair enough. Sounds cool.
MikeFRobbins.com. Let me go ahead and pull up that last slide.
Yeah, let me know. We'll link it on the on our blog too.
So contact information, MikeFRobbins.com. My initials, of course, are Mike Robbins. So also an alias to my blog is Mr. PowerShell for Mike Robbins. PowerShell.com. Twitter, I'm at MikeFRobbins. Like Lito was saying, I'm one of the co-founders of the Mississippi PowerShell user group. We have our meetings on the second Tuesday of the month at 8:30 p.m. Central Time, so it's 9:30 your guys' time. Bo Prox, who is a honorary scripting guy, he's going to be speaking this coming Tuesday, so that should be a very good session. And we record all our sessions as well. You can go to our YouTube channel and view all those. We've had Jeff Hicks, we've had Don Jones, we've had several of the same speakers you guys have had. We've had Jeff Wouters. We've had the GoTPFE. And I'm not. Hopefully, I'm not leaving anybody out. But I actually wrote a chapter in the PowerShell Deep Dive book. And what I did, I have authors from the PowerShell Deep Dive book speaking all year. Oh, and Ron Edwards, he spoke 1 month as well. And I always say all of our speakers this year are. All of our guest speakers are authors in the PowerShell Deep Dives book. And then Ron says, well, I'm not an author. And I said, yeah, but you're not a guest speaker. You're a founder. And if you are interested in the PowerShell Deep Dives book, it's like a conference in a book. So there's about 24 different authors, and some of them wrote, like me, I just wrote one chapter. Other authors wrote 2 or 3 chapters, but it's a very good book, and you can read one. Every chapter is independent of another. So if there's a topic, like mine is on event logs. It's on auditing servers with event logs. So you could read that chapter and not have to read any of the other chapters to understand that topic. And as a matter of fact, during the scripting games, there's a chapter in there by Jonathan Med about HTML.
I think we lost him. Hey, Mike, can you hear me? Oh, well. See if he comes back in a minute, but we'll just say a very special thank you to Mike Robbins for presenting for us tonight. And be sure to check out his blog. He does a pretty excellent blog. Mike. We'll keep an eye out for that thing that he's going to post about to answer your question there. Oh yeah, thanks for reminding me. So how do I do that?
I think you can try at the bottom. This is 3 gold plus buttons.
There we go. Yeah. Stop. I think I'm sharing now. So this is Mike's blog. Definitely check it out. What's that? Oh, my screen. Yeah. So we want to thank everybody online who turned out. We're gonna switch over to more of like a script and tell script club type session, which may be, depending on who's in the chat, a little bit difficult to follow. So usually sometimes people drop off at this point, but we'll do our best to keep everything up and running for you guys. And John, who's also presenting, is recording everything, so we'll have it posted on the YouTube channel for later. Yeah, so sorry, Mike, we lost you at the end there, but thank you again for a wonderful presentation. Any news or announcements? Anything you guys wanted to mention?
There is Young, who here last month or
Oh yes, Young Chow, the technical.
Microsoft IT evangelist wanted me to kind of pass along the
Is that in his
yeah, and then
email?
he passed up an email. He's like, apparently they're doing a Windows Azure I infrastructure as a service, better that way, series, and they're coming here to the Philly area on the 24th of this month. If anybody is interested in that, we'll send the link on our blog so that you can go from there and sign up if you want to. He said attendees should acquire a free 30-day trial subscription, and then with that trial you'll get a $200 credit. And because at this series they're going to do hands-on labs and everything like that with the IaaS Azure platform. All right.
Cool. I came across something.
Young. Yeah, Young Chow, I think is how you say it. You want to share that one? Yeah.
I think this is his blog wall.
Good. Maybe he gave me.
So, let's see if I can bring this up real quick. So, I came across this. I haven't had a chance to play around with it, but it looks very cool, which is basically an application deployment kit built in PowerShell. So if you take a look at the CodePlex page, you can customize the installation screen. It uses, I think, Windows Forms or WPF to generate the GUI for you. It'll let you set, you can defer and install, so the user can defer or choose to close, it'll handle dependencies for you and things like that. So I just glanced over it, this week, came across my feed reader. So definitely something worth taking a look at if it's interesting. Other than that, I really don't have any real additional announcements and stuff. We have started the initial beginnings of a talk to host a PowerShell Saturday event at some undetermined date in the future. So if you're at all interested in helping us organize that, or you want to give a talk, or you would like to, help us out in any way, just contact one of us and we would be most appreciative. Nothing really, concrete at all just yet. We're just kind of kicking it around and, seeing what, infant stages, baby steps. So.
Exploratory phase.
Exploratory phase, yeah, for sure. So, did it?
Big undertaking the beer.
Yeah. Hey, that sounds good to me.
It's a big undertaking and it's a lot to do. So anybody who wants to help, we are looking for a lot of help with and ideas.
So with that said, did anybody bring any scripts or anything that they wanted to share with the group?
We don't need like something.
Okay.
It's like
Real quick, this is just a small thing we came across. It's not PowerShell related, but if you ever need to deploy something or package something, drop things in folders and execute. I know you can make compressed files in Windows.
Mm-hmm.
Just start run iExpress. Add
packager.
It makes a self-extracting zip file where it can actually execute commands on extraction.
Nice.
Built into Windows 7 and higher.
Nice. iExpress. Nice. There you go.
So if you want to use it, you're ready to
Boom. So, John, you sent me a mail. I would like to see your mail.
So does anybody use SCCM?
Yep.
So we have this, we'll call it a scenario for applications that we call monocompliant. And when they're monocompliant, we advertise to a machine, and this is just in relation to SCCM 2007 at this point. It goes immediately. As soon as the machine gets its new policy, gets its marching orders, it will carry out your
It's going to be the add machine.
test sequence right then and there. So recently we were trying to go about it a different way because we have a deployment window on the weekends between Sunday morning, and anything that we want to send out in mass will add those machines to. At that point, they will get added. And all of our monocompliant collections, they are considered to ignore any maintenance windows. So if somebody wanted them ad hoc during the week, they get them ad hoc during the week. So that being said, if we had another test sequence that would serve as just an item or vehicle to add the computer to the model compliant collection, that would serve our purpose. We could add them at any point during the week, and those advertisements are not set to ignore the maintenance window, so it will only go during the maintenance window. The problem is, and here's the script. There's nothing proprietary here. It's actually on the SDK 12.net. The problem is the collection evaluator in SCCM is not fast enough. That's when the collection gets refreshed and says, okay, yes, you're now in this collection, I will move on. It will throw a failure because if you have well, let's just say anything over 100 machines, it starts exponentially getting higher failure rates. So let's just say 500 machines, you're going to get a pretty high failure rate because those 500 machines are all trying to grab attention at the same time. When the advertisement gets kicked off, say, please add me to this collection, am I in this collection, thanks. So SCCM will come back and say, you're not in the collection because by the time it's trying to catch up with the refreshing on SCCM side, the script has already said, I get a failure. So I realize that this could be more SCCM, however, and there are other ways around this. You can have a web service. There's an SCCM web service out there that you could add items to a collection. It'll parse it, it'll go one by one, but we don't really have any resources that we can ask for a developer to put that web service together for us. So at this point, I'm trying to get this script have the ability to, I don't know, pause or loop, but
Random columns, that's not all they want.
So that's the thing. Each computer has this as its marching number. And each computer, if you give it a static amount of time, it's just going to wait the static amount of time. And it's all going to hit SCCM again anyways at the same time, and they'll all fail because the collection evaluator is still not fast enough because all you've done is move the window. So in this, you are providing parameters of the management server, the site code, and collection ID, and the computer. In this case, the computer name parameter would be %, computer name %. It runs locally, and it will find your collection ID that you've given the params. It'll try to add it, and then it's going to verify, and you will get an incorrect function return if it doesn't verify. It doesn't exit nicely, but if you run it one at a time, it'll always work. So it's all a matter of trying to be slow enough so SCCM's collection evaluator.
Do you have any numbers or anything like that in your computer name?
Yes.
If they're all unique numbers, thinking is there any way chop that up and that would be good. I feel like the last 4 digits of your computer name would numbers. And say wait an hour period of time. Divided by whatever you actually have.
Assuming that I don't have too many of one particular, we'll have a machine code along with the name.
You can just do a random split, reduce, get a random number and split that number a second. And then just loop. I mean, if it fails the second time,
You
do it again.
you want this code to execute on the remote host, right?
Sorry?
You want this code here to execute on.
SCCM will will carry this out on the local host of each machine. So yeah, they all had a random wait time
So if you use something like PowerShell remoting and put all this.
That I can't do yet, but.
Oh, okay.
So SCCM is the one that's actually running the PowerShell scripts locally on the foreign machine.
Okay.
It basically drops a package on there and says, run this starting at this time.
Sure.
Okay, I'm gonna try to run it.
And they all run
go. I'm gonna wait 5 minutes, you're gonna wait 10 minutes. On each machine, they're gonna have a random thing. Some order.
Yeah, so I mean, in the begin block here, just like what Greg said, you could do like a random sleep, right? So you could say, like, get some entropy. So
Yeah, get random as the
1
command
to
line.
300,000 or something, or whatever is an acceptable window. And then as SCCM drops the package and executes it on each remote host, they're all waking up, they're all executing the package, and they all get instructed to wait a random cycle. And hopefully, if you have enough entropy in there, they're balancing out, so they're not colliding into this, this discovery collector issue.
Or put the list there so that SCCM is sending out the package that they used to get random and set it at a minimum of 30 seconds, max 60, and deploy the package. And to get that in a full, so what was it? It's running against whatever computer name is now. Min 30 seconds, max 60 seconds.
And like as we said, you mentioned you had like a second, you get 100 computers. You can do fractions of a second too. And you're realizing that you don't want to wait like an actual second or two, like 10 seconds. But if you get to the point where you realize, okay, it might be like a quarter of a second, you can just do like a random between like 0.10 and like 0.20 or something.
You have to find out how many are.
So I know that 100 computers at a time or less is pretty reliable.
I mean, you just gotta figure out, do you split it over 10 minutes or 100 minutes and do the math to get the range. And then the only other thing I would add is have it try more than once, so put it in some sort of loop. But don't let it try forever.
I was gonna say, I got a whole different way of looking at it.
Don't let it try forever.
Flag while it's not in collection, and do while not in collection.
Well, the problem with that is you might hammer the server. So I do like sleeping because it's not hammering the
But
server.
you can do while not in collection.
But put it in a loop so that it can fail once or twice while there's still batches of these out there. But don't let it run forever so that you don't get a job that just gets out there and keeps on trying and has no failures there. So maybe it counts down from 5 like it's 0 bombs anyway.
The random.
Yes.
Yeah, like
It's all combining
John
this
said, random is you may actually. But if you do, to John's point, if you do between 0.75 and 1 second, if you can handle about a period of time roughly, you ran between 0.7 and 0.1, the most you're gonna get is what, 75?
It's all a matter of like finding the boundary of that collection. What did you call it? The collector that's having the issue?
It's a collection evaluator.
Yeah, so
Basically establishing too many connections to the server at once, and then it goes, I'm not taking any more connections while I process this. Yes.
It's a
It
queue.
takes that rejection as, failure zone.
It's a queue. There's a certain number of seconds before it'll process through that queue, and then once it gets to this computer's turn, this computer says, "Hey, I already tried, so I failed."
Do you know what command is down?
When it goes to refresh, it says, "Is this?" It's at the bottom. Verify that the machine got added to the target collection. It'll fail there because it's not in the collection.
so it can't do this it can't call the get method on the, like it can't run this line.
It's failing. Yeah, it just bombs out.
It's failing someplace before that, though, but it's not adding to the collection or. Like you check and it's not just failing on there, saying it's not in the collection, it's actually not in the collection, right? It's not-
It doesn't, right, it doesn't go into the collection, so I guess,
It's failing someplace before that.
yeah, let's say, I guess to,
If you can figure out if it gives you
Twenty
actually,
is where it's going.
if it actually gives you an actual like error where it's failing, but it's like a soft error and it keeps going, you can catch that in a try catch block and say, okay, I had a failure. I'm going to pause for like 10 seconds, and I'm going to retry with the last one I left off on and go forward. That way, you don't have to introduce a random portion every time it processes the machine.
Yeah,
Like my error hits, pause, retry on that one, keep going. Next time, 5 computers later, that error hits, stop, wait like 10 seconds, and then throw that machine is errored on and go forward.
That's a good point. You could also set like a count, like an integer count, like let's say after the 10th time. So you could just do it and do what, like you catch on that exception message that you know is what this, the collection evaluator is failing on, and then just loop either, and you don't want to loop endlessly, but you could loop till like nth time and do, what John suggested. Just have it keep trying.
And it may not be, like I said, it's throwing a soft error, you can always force it with error action, stop. Because if it's throwing a soft error, like say if you do like something with soft error, maybe like you get commands for file stuff, and the file's not there, it's not a halting error, I think it's a stop moving forward. You can force it to be a stop error. That way, obviously, slow, this didn't work, normally I just let it fly.
Running it and you don't have interface.
Yeah, this is going to happen at 2 in the morning.
Yeah, well, it's also running it here. Unless you're actually putting it out to a log.
Okay.
Even if you're sitting in front of the computer, you're not necessarily going to see it because.
Well, this script doesn't run as system, actually runs as a domain account that we have set up.
So you have to be logged on as that.
Yeah,
on
you wouldn't, otherwise you wouldn't see it.
And tell it not to be hidden, otherwise it's going to run. You'd have to put some type of log in, like for each command, like something. On the machine, see what like that, where you can actually. I'm familiar with the PowerShell syntax for.
I would just throw the whole thing in a try. I would just throw the whole thing in a try block. I
Yeah.
never get dumped to a log from there.
So you do something like this. Oops. Well, not the Z's.
Otherwise, down, like if you have several failures, like you said, they're always failing on this line.
So this would just print out, like, essentially, this is not a very helpful catch. It would just print out the error message, like the actual exception message, which you could, if you wanted to, log to a file at this point, or take some other action. You could do it in this catch block.
Just do like a start transcript as well. Kind of stop that transcript.
Yeah, you could do that like right at the very beginning. You could do start transcript. And then at the bottom of your script, do an end transcript. And I think you can give this a path. It'll log everything that you'll see in your PowerShell console that the script runs. So any output stream, robot stream, warning, error message. It basically logs your console session, line by line.
If you do any pass-throughs, it should add that too as well.
Yep.
If there's something that wouldn't get caught.
Yep. Everything that is being done by PowerShell that's getting that has some output is getting written, including the commands that you execute.
But it won't. It doesn't make any difference to the rest of the script.
No, it's just writing all that data to a file. I think, what's the default path? Is it in your? I forget.
Just make sure that you can.
It's the account is also an admin box.
Unless it's the admin, if you have AC, can't wait to. So it might be in your
No,
profile.
there's actually, we have a specified, so
uses the path and the value of the $transcript global variable. If you haven't created that, then it stores the transcripts in your home folder, My Documents directory. So. It's all good ideas. Let's see. Here's a really dumb one. So let's say you needed to create like some machine names and you wanted to have like a prefix and then like a leading 0, so like 0, 1 through 10 or something like that. I came up with this. Basically what we're doing is saying do a count of 1 to whatever this digit is. So we're doing an array of 1 to 10, and then for each item we're appending the prefix, and we're using the PowerShell, the .NET formatting to put the leading, two decimals with a leading 0, and then we cast the result that we're formatting, as an actual integer. So whatever I want my prefix to be, it could be test or whatever, and you run that. And then if you wanted to take it further, you could see that I have my somewhere in here. I'm ill prepared. But I had to create a whole bunch of test VMs for something that I wanted to test out. So same thing, basically just use that to get your prefix, and then for each of the names, just loop through and create a VM. And I think I saw one. Yeah. So this is basically just taking, I had a CSV file that holds MAC address registration data from our telecom group. They require that you, first register a device if it's going to connect to an admin network. So I had a list of pre-registered MACs that I wanted to get names for, essentially. So this is just taking a CSV file, matching on some records that begin with a prefix, and creating VMs for those guys. So scenario is I have some dev VMs that have Mac, like static Macs that are pre-registered so that they can talk to the outside world.
The caret is a wildcard?
The caret is a regex match for the beginning of a string. So this is saying match on a string that begins with CLA dev. Anybody else have anything? I got stuff I can bore you with.
I had something that I can go through.
Yeah, come on up.
Alright, whoever something I thought was, it's in the same folder. I'll bring it up if you don't mind.
Hash table?
Yeah, there's a few things I had to import. We need to import that file. Just as some examples.
Do I have anything that I need to save? Yeah, just don't close the IC for me.
I'm gonna try my hardest not to close it. So you got here. Actually, might bring up the window here. All right, so what we're gonna do here is do a few things. Let me do a new one while that. So what I'm gonna do is I recently been working on a EWS script. If you guys have never worked with Exchange Web Services and PowerShell, it's a blast. It's really archaic, and I don't know. It's just going from PowerShell to try and use EWS. It's like, I don't know. It's crazy. There's all sorts of crazy methods you got to load. And it's a huge pain. But anyway, one of the things I was working on is that we have a calendar that everyone in this one group, we sync their calendar for all these for holidays, different events within the company. since we do a lot of stock trading stuff, it's a lot of expiration dates and trader specific like days and events. So let's bring this in. Is that going to work? So one of the things is we have this little CSV file that holds all the information for that, and basically push out the EWS. So just give you an idea what it looks like. So we got start dates, and this is one I fake one I just tested right here, so it's got garbage information. Basically, start date, end date, is all day, reminder set, status, the color, reoccurrence, body path, and other things. Well, one of the things I was worried about, since a few people may have their hands on this, I kind of saw someone else do this, and I thought it was really cool, was my biggest thing was, what if somebody put for like the update or false, like anything for false, what do they put? Yes, true, no, false. I wanted to see if I can try to compensate for these sort of things, especially in, for status, a few other things as well. So for example, I got that guy in. I'll show you what we did is to use a hash table to kind of normalize that data as it came in. So what I'm bringing is so one of the cool things is you can actually use a hash table. So basically in the hash table I built all the possible garbage entries I can think of that somebody might enter for a true or false. So obviously a regular true or false, a yes or no, a 0 or 1, or just blank if somebody wants something to be false. And then I can use that to actually, when I'm pulling in the data, not worrying have to like figure out exactly what this person did or didn't do. Quickly. Oh, there we go. So, for example, I have my CSV file. One entry here. You'll see that in the update field for the first entry, I have false, like number 1 is false, we saw earlier. Sorry, true. Sorry, I'm in trouble working on the laptop here. So update yes. So here we'll do this. So basically, in order to compensate for this, I always have to forget how to do it. So hold up where I have that. So what I can do is I can actually use that table to search for it. So as opposed to trying to figure out if update is yes, no, 1, I can just do. Let's see where I have my. So I'm getting all confused here. So as we saw earlier, if I do hold 1 first entry, the first entry was the number 1, but because I had this hash table here that has all those information and leading up to an actual value, when I go to actually evaluate that, I don't have to worry about actually having to compensate for that. I can just have the hash table just kind of go at it like crazy. Another example of that is, say, for example, if I need to worry about somebody, bring it over here. Another thing we need to worry about is if the status should be set to free, busy, out of office. One of the things I was worried about was that a lot of people have a different way of saying out of office. A lot of people just say out of office, OOF, OOO. Sorry, or just out of office, spaces. Yeah, well, out, yeah, OOTO. I'm going to add that one so I don't forget. But you can use something like that to actually kind of figure out, pre-compensate for all the crazy stuff people might enter in a CSV file that you're going to be working on, as opposed to kind of going through it and trying to normalize it beforehand. So I thought that was a pretty cool idea for testing purposes. So basically, in my EWS script, I kind of have it before it enters the data or builds the calendar object. I kind of, like I said right here, just run it through the hash table for that particular entry. And we could do another one just for giggles again. I think the last one was, what was the last? My last one was blank. No. Correct. It's not case sensitive. I think hash tables aren't normally case sensitive. Because I think, for example,
I mean, like, it was kind of something like lowercase f, uppercase r.
so for example, this case sensitive. Never mind. Oh wait, actually, no. Wait. No, it's not case sensitive. I just did double quotes by accident. So no, it's not case sensitive in regards to that. I think there's a way to force it, but off the top of my head, I forget. I'd have to actually look into it. Like I said, it was something cool I came across like a few weeks ago. Yeah, along those lines. Or just like, for example, here we have it all different ways. Yeah, as long as it evaluates to the characters. So, like I said, I thought it was a pretty cool way to actually normalize stuff as it's coming in. That was it.
Anybody else?
I was actually working on today.
Yeah.
I don't have a good way to show you. Basically, it's got a separate script that grabs all of the local administrators and all servers within the domain. Users groups could be any variety of things, local accounts, everything else. In this case, we are a child domain of quasi-entity tourism group. Then there's 36 other domains that groups could be coming from. This list of domain/account or group, no problem. And I was trying to figure out how to best find out if it was a group, find out who's a member of those groups. And I obviously need to go against those domains specifically to retrieve those members. The only thing I could come up with short term was I can go against the global cat at the root and get the distinguished name of the group and basically take the domain information off the end and almost reconstruct. So if I'm doing get AD group member, basically reconstruct it so that it reads properly and use --server and use the domain name to get that group membership. I can't think of a better way to do that.
So you have users or groups, or you just both?
Oh, in particular, I need to find out the group members.
Do you have do you want to put projected up here?
Have you tried looking at the QA, the Quest 80 tools?
I have, to some extent. I know you can do additional things with it. I was kind of trying to avoid that. I can do that as an option.
So if you have a user, you want to know if that person is in a particular group?
Not kind of the inverse.
We did a quick try to do first. One for and mostly
Do like function, function, or whatever it is.
Have a DB script that would actually go out and get the members and then the subgroups. You get objects and stuff like that.
The wrong group.
So I've done this not only against one domain, with the Quest tools. They're really nice.
This is the simple thing of running. You say, type in the name, here's all the people in the groups and the subgroups. Hard to get from ED itself, because it just gives me something like a copy and paste and everything.
Control plus.
Right now, I'm just kind of messing with it in multiple scripts here, but I basically created an output file.
Can you make that bigger? This is my optimum viewing range.
Control plus.
Yeah, well, it is. It's about twice the length of my arm. It's just about. Is that better? That's getting better. Yeah, that's good. There you go.
Basically, I'm going to dump up the CSV file for fine, platform later for right now. And because obviously there's the same groups on multiple machines and whatever, we try to find unique objects themselves. So what it comes back with is basically it's for the local admin jail, come back with the NetBIOS name of the domain / user. What I'm doing is stripping off that first portion of that BIOS name and doing a lookup against local for the group or username, doesn't really matter in this case, but I'm going to do most of the other groups. And what it returns is basically something like this. So it gives a fully distinguished name. One of the that is the domain that is in. And I can create that domain to retrieve that group.
Can't you get the group membership from the global catalog? No.
Not unless it's a universal or a local.
Before doing the loader with the domain name, make them local.
Correct.
Right, what do you say?
So mostly it's going to be local on the server, so I can get global information from the domain. So the only thing I can think of what effectively is it takes the name, grab the domain information, essentially reconstruct it. So it comes back the name of the domain and then tell the query against that domain. I think that's better way to do it if there is one. All that makes sense. I don't think real well.
Are these all child documents or are they trust or what? Child. So if you run that, probably can't do that. Or count that's a higher one. It'll look down on the other. I just
So
don't
we
know
know
about
about
their
their
domain
global
in its own
domain.
name.
That's what I started messing with. I can get the with the name itself. Splitting it on the distinguished name. Effectively, reconstructing it, get the domain name. You can think about better ways.
Sounds like roach sounds like the right one.
I'm trying to think of any way. I couldn't think of one offhand. It was a good one.
You want both?
Yeah, just accept that. Not only not one of the options in CIM.
For CMDlets.
Right.
What, I mean, knowing that your domains change much? Because you could probably, rather than do the string manipulation, you could probably just match the parts of the string if it equal to this, then use this, rather than doing a lot of customization.
There's 36 of them.
Yeah, but if they're not changing a lot, you might not want to
In some
manipulate.
cases, there's child domains below the child domain, so you have 42 child. So it's basically put it into an array, and before you know, we're going to do a loop through it.
You might just do like a case statement at that point. giant case they made it into a function.
I was actually thinking using your dictionary. Just build out there right at the top and look this up and grab this. You would have to find or read it in some file, build it. I did that with the script that updates our exchange with county information for a couple of offices. And I put all the office information in a CSV file, read it into a hash table, use that to, rather than putting it in the script. Just use city, state, you know, kind of thing. And then it's in some sort of big file instead of in the main script.
I could even do it, you wouldn't even have to file, I could actually do that as a variable at that point too, and just get the main names themselves and bang into that. That's an option. That's not a bad option at all. And then, yeah, basically do a match on, find the first DC in that string, and do a match. If it's this, then that's good.
Are you looking for privileges?
That's effectively what we're trying to find out, is who all specifically has local administrative privileges on whatever server.
You know, that's interesting about. I can tell you the biggest challenge. There have been about 6 engineers on the team that I have at Microsoft that I think who have been trying to solve that exact problem at an enterprise scale. Most of the has yet to get accomplished. They've been working on it for, I think, 2 years. I think because they were trying to find local, specifically local labs and services, where services can tie and do it at an enterprise scale. So basically, so the team I work for created the risk assessment program, so we could wrap services. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to walk into a customer, and there's already enterprise that they do use. But these are a bunch of guys who got spare time trying to use PowerShell. They were also, the bigger part of the project is called packet structure. And they wanted to basically log in on Apple's side and say, so take me a user, give me a privilege or any user, doesn't matter, and show where they have permissions in my side. Not just where they're allowed to services they're tagged to, but specifically Apple boxes.
That's a whole bigger.
And they just, and these guys are sort of surprised. Like if anybody's ever had an AD graph, they wrote it full token size. They can basically go through and calculate, and that in itself is monstrous. Apple actually working on that.
Yeah, we just went through our first team.
So this is
so we're looking at the
this
isn't that bad. ACL is a whole.
Apple actually, I haven't heard that last time.
Apple's a PowerShell, and you know, just don't have to done that stuff.
Yeah.
I can attest to that because it was one of the things like using user issue script. And just don't try to set that Apple that says they weren't part of child folder, but they had here, and they couldn't be owner of the folder, but they, you know, all this fun, you know, they could own the file, but they couldn't own the folder. Yeah, all that stuff for security, you know,
Half of that was just finding all the shares that were out there.
Well, that's right. You can't research shares, you just have to have it security. You're quite right. It's a mind-boggling.
I wouldn't even bet, that's hurt on my eye, I'm not even touching that. Unless you guys can identify. Don't ask, I don't care.
And I didn't get the first part, but groups are rather interesting, and it gets more complicated depending on the environment. There are a couple of attributes, and just check. I've been 2 years since I've touched AD day to day, about 2 years. There are some token attributes, and the token attribute, there's 2 or 3 of them. One of them includes universal domain language, and one doesn't. And they're tagged user. They're constructed to use them. They're not typical like multi-value string. You could dump the token attribute and grab every group They're stored in a different format, and I honestly can't remember what it is, not straight, but it might solve part of what we're looking for. Instead of having to enumerate different species in a multi-domain forest, or comparing what you see when you're not going to get it back. Just maybe something else. But I don't know what
No, I'm not.
I was busy writing one for you, so.
I've only seen that relative to like an LDAP filter type of query. Is that what you're talking about? Token attributes?
No, token, you would actually go and enumerate the, on user object, you would go and enumerate one, yeah, it's pretty much, you could do it, you know, any LDAP query, to return the DC, right, but then I don't have it stored in that.
1639 HRV or L639 capital R?
Bit.ly.
There's a couple.
This one's kind of
1639.
Capital H, capital R, capital B.
Well, getting the whole lab into that fast.
That's especially when that's domains
Just trying to getting the whole lab and information about that was.
So you got that part. You have the part that's the one of the numbers of the group that's trying to get better.
No, that part I have, it's actually. I'm doing that as just, know that this is literally pulling everything. My own personal functions. It's basically the entire URL, meaning Windows server. So making sure that it's there, test connect.
You have individuals that have access to the servers instead of groups.
Both. The individuals I'm aware of, those I've got, and I actually might still have the file.
Do we use the lockdown policy? It says that it's on here, somebody gets in there, it's some sensors like that. Server read the event log, see if someone's getting it.
Yeah, that's true. Just looking at this basically output. I don't know if it's this basically just server name. And information, so when he's supposed to go forward, for purposes of the other one, importing that down to the CSV and then trying to bang against that whole group of information. I like that idea. That's a definite possibility. It might be substantially quicker. I know the domains, or I can't easily query that and get the
Yeah, man. Anybody else have anything to? Yeah. Sure. VGA.
All right, so a couple of introductory things. First off, I work in a small shop. I'm the IT director. I got a handful of people who work for me, but most of them are doing programming, so I don't let them do the infrastructure. I've got a couple of administrators, but I don't trust them to run my backup system because I've had to restore a SQL server without good backups, which took me about 3 months on my own. So I really like to make sure my backups work well. The advantage I have is a small place, one location, so I can sort of cheat a little bit. Things that you would do in a large enterprise, which I've worked in, I would never do. like things like counting on drives being in a certain way. Because I set drives up, so I'm pretty comfortable.
So what I have is a DPM, you're data term. Nice tool.
From a backup perspective, I love it. It runs no problem, it sends me an alert. Half an hour later, it sends me another thing, they fix the problem. I love it, it's like having an extra employee.
So over here on the right, I've got my list of tape drives. Now, the tape drives are actually fire streamer drives. Fire streamer, if you don't know, is a little utility that takes just about anything that can be mounted and makes it look like a tape library. The reason I do that is that Data Protection Manager will talk to a removable hard drive. And what I'm using currently for my off-site rotation is USB drives. So here's my USB drives. They're all little 2 terabyte passports. 1, 2, 3, 4. I got a nice set of these, and I rotate them. Build a nice little case with foam, and it looks really cool. And my administrator who takes them off-site gave it a cute name. She loves to, carry this thing back and forth, and it looks really cool. But the problem is this. I don't want to have to change the tapes. I want to automate it to someone else. The way you have to change these tapes, DPM, is I have to go over to DPM, select the library, unlock the library. Then I have to go over to the fire streamer interface, select this, the library I'm dealing with here, virtual library, go into Actions, tell it to unload. Then I have to come back over here, lock the library up, so that it's locked, and I can go do the same thing for the next library. And DPM won't let you unlock more than one library at a time. So it's unlock, unload, lock, unlock, unload. It's a pain in the butt. And if you don't put the right library, the right disk in the right library, your backups are going to hell. Your trouble won't be able to restore and all that stuff. So guess what? There's an PowerShell, right? So the beauty of this is that I can run this. And I'll just sort of walk you through this without too much insanity, hopefully. Let me blow this up for Greg. Can you read that, Greg?
That's good.
That's
good for me, too.
Same here, I'm the same way. So, first off, this is work in progress. You can see the latest date here is 9/3. It's off-site rotator.
Can you maximize that window?
Yeah, sure. Basically what it does is a couple of things. As I said, it's work in progress. So the ultimate goal is to do a couple of things. I'll be adding in some pre-flight checks to make sure that there are no unlock changes. Because if there's an unlock changer, and I try to unlock a different one, it'll fail. So I'm going to go through and I can check the status of them all, make sure they're all locked up. If they're not, I can lock them. I can warn the administrator or whatever. And I should say, my ultimate goal is basically to place a couple of icons on the desktop. One for unloading, one for loading. My operator comes in, logs in, clicks the one, unloads, it'll tell them that. They walk over, change the tapes, come back, hit the load up button, and that's the ultimate goal. Obviously, we'll check the actual tape drives that takes any other that are in use. If it's a long-running job, shouldn't be, because they all finish up with their regular rotation, which they do on Mondays. But just in case, let's catch it, tell the operator, they back off. And then turn the whole thing into a nice little module with the proper parameters, give you make it look pretty, and so that I can actually show it to a group of people. But we're all friends, so I decided as we say is open the kimono, show you what's inside. Okay, and finally set up the desktop. So basically, I looked at the constants, which are all the parameters. There's a load, there's an unload. If I were to run this right now, it would go out, it would try to load everything up from scratch. If I unload, and I can do this when I'm not using it, so let's just walk through it. I won't run it, but because, I'll probably end up spending half the night fixing it if I do. We could try it. But there's this interesting aspect to this, and I have a question for the group at the end of this as well. One thing I'd like to do that I've abandoned because I've heard that it's not that necessary, but I'll put that. So my backup server is created, this is US 3.1, and load is the load that drives. So first thing I'm going to be doing is, I
I'm just outputting stuff on the screen because this is work in progress and I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing. So just making sure everything is there. Come down to my DPM server and I'm going to load the module for the data protection manager stuff. So I just check it's not load that up so I can manage it. Next step is I got to list all the active tape libraries. Now, my tape libraries, some of this I've gotten from online, obviously, some of it I tweaked and some of it I just figured it out. So basically, I query DPM, find all the libraries where there's a protection group assigned. And that's essentially what it does. Because if there's a protection group assigned, it's not going to return an empty string. Okay, so that's just going to be a collection of libraries that are active. That's called DPMdlets. Next is the file streamer thing. There's a nice little DLL load up, and the file streamer people actually gave you the beginning of this code. It comes online. So I just basically load up that DLL and dump out that stuff into file tape, which is where I set that controller, I connect to it. And then I go out and look at the library configuration and how many libraries I have. Now that I've got out, I'm going to go to the library and basically execute my script to load or unload whatever my mode is. So the process is almost identical. So it's the same process. Unlock the drive. So I'm going to get the drive and the changer corresponds to the library. Now to do that, I'm going to go get friendly name of the library, make sure it's clean, no trailing crap, so it's just the old school. I started writing code with basic with Fortran, so I'm very procedural in my process. But I'm making the transition to objects. So I basically take a friendly library, and what I have to do to do that, if you notice my libraries, they're all named in a nice consistent fashion, and that is, they're named DPM underscore, the first digit is its rotation, so this is drive set 1. If I've got 4 rotations, I might go, I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I have the drive number, so it's -1, -2. The last digit is the drive number. So I get the drive number. Then I go through and I find out which drive number goes into which library, which file streamer. So I match them up. Now I've got drive, I've got library, and then I just, dump some crap out so because it's work in progress, I can make sure what's going on in case I screwed anything up. So once I do all that, then I go on and unlock the drive. Now I'm outputting the date again. It's just, and the reason I was doing dates is again for debugging. What I was running into was a problem where, and then you'll see at the bottom, the thing I finally figured out was I needed to enter a delay because the libraries are very slow to react. You can run them in asynchronous mode, then I gotta go and check and make sure that it completed the task. Even if I run it in synchronous mode and DPM says load, it sometimes isn't. So I put a date here when I was doing this to see, how long does it take this operation? So I put a little dates down there and I unlock the library and I'll put the date, the time, just to see how long did that take to unlock the library. And again, work in progress, obviously this gets cleaned up. So once the library is unlocked, I go to the file streamer thing, and I tell the file streamer I'm going to change the media in there, and all I have to do is I just execute load mode, which is this section right here. I go and I run the, tell the file streamer to change it, and what's the media map? The media map is actually a file name that's on the drive, and somewhere here I grabbed that, so I apologize for not pointing that out. Here it is. So I actually go out and look on the drive, and the drive is the media map is always drive letter, which I have defined because I knew the drive number, so I determined the drive letter. And the media map is always media map disk underscore the name of the map file, which is the rotation number dash whatever the drive letter is. .ss map, which is the name of the file name. So if you go look at my drives, look at one of these drives, there's the media map file. And it has to be specified as a path, it's a regular drive path. So that's why it's all that machination to get that so that I can pass it to the file stream and say, media map, basically loads the media. And then I just got a little bit of text. It's done. Now, if I was in mode for unloading, I would just do this operation. So that's the only difference between loading and unloading. In this case, I'm just unloading the drive. Simple as that. All done, great, and then, oh, by the way, if I spelled it wrong or did something stupid, I jump out. That didn't really seem to let me out. Again, sort of debug mode. And then after that, I lock up the drive doors, and this was a little magic. For a long time, I couldn't see this thing would work consistently. I would run it, one of the drives wouldn't lock, it would screw things up, everything got out of whack. And I finally figured out I needed to add a little bit of a delay after locking the drive, because what would happen is I would go to lock the drive, and I'd immediately start to unlock the next drive. And that drive hadn't finished, and it would just drop out. And that's it. So that's basically the process. Now, just for giggles, because I'm feeling adventurous. Did I run this in I did. Shall we watch and see what happens? Since I'm not doing that.
It's your night.
So let's see if I can run this in a way that we can actually see it.
So does it actually update the status?
Yeah, you'll see the stuff flipping along here. So let's see what happens. We're just going to go to my end. Yeah, so up here, set the mode and unload just for giggles. And what's nice is I'll get DPM and some of the words that I know that are tapes. This runs, you're not going to see the output of the screen. So the load's unloaded, it's going through its thing, and look over on this. You just saw the loaded, unloaded there. Over on the right, you'll see the number of empty slots will flip to 200. Eventually, nothing breaks once it loads up, and then the next drive will fire off. Just cruising, and there it goes to 200, and then just do the next one. It takes 15 seconds. It's faster, more reliable than me doing it, because I personally upload stuff on my drive. I'm having a person who's not paying attention and just does it week in and week out. They'll not do it right, and this is ideal for scripting. Okay, so we unloaded. Oh, and by the way, notice sometimes drives come out of sequence. So gotta do that. You gotta head out. Okay. So sometimes the driver is different. So my script doesn't matter what the drives are in. I'm the right drive, right map file, load all the media, do what it's supposed to do. I just got this working pretty well this week. Like I said, it's still
You're done.
So yeah, you'd be done.
Not one mojo there.
And no mojo there. And no problem, basically ran. So now next step is, where am I coding? Now I'm going to load that back up, because otherwise my offsite route must have something. So now we just fire that up. And it'll just basically reverse the process, and you'll see all those things. Unload. Yep. There's my media, yada yada yada. So while that's running, here's my question. These are USB drives. Now, generally good practice, right, to check your USB drives. So I've been looking for the way to do that. Now, the WMI call says dismount the drive. And I've seen some code, and I've tried some things. And the funny thing is, there's a dismount, but it doesn't make it go away off my screen. Like you normally, if I go in and say eject this drive, it disappears, right? So I found some other code to do that, and what you do is, you do a dismount, but you still have a mount point. You can do a dismount, it says it dismounts it, but the mount point doesn't go away and the drive is still showing. If you remove the mount point, the drive will go away, but guess what? The drive won't automatically mount again either. So you plug it back in, it doesn't come back. Anybody have any? Nope. So you'll go into the storage manager and remount it there.
Even in a different USB port.
That drive gets marked, not automated. Even though that's not what you're telling it it's supposed to do. So it's funny, you see on the forums, this is what I did. And you see, this was great. Now I can't mount my drive.
Well, I wonder if it's because of the mount is actually a file, might be a file value thing.
file system volume thing and not so much the USB issue.
Right.
So it's not that it can't identify.
Now, there's a DLL called HotSwap.dll, which I haven't played with yet, and I thought about playing with that. I was thinking, PowerShell, this is something, I mean, somebody in PowerShell must have this down, right? Well, yeah, I want the equivalent of coming over here, and you'll see the reason why. Watch how long this takes to come up. This takes forever, and I got 4 drives to do. And I want to, and if I click that, it's going to take, it just adds. I'd rather, if I'm doing an unload everything, and have my script go through and reject them all. Put up a nice big happy face, yeah, you can go swap the drives. And look like, so that's my stuff. So
The measure command would be a good place for your start and stop.
I know. I was too.
Just, I mean, it gives you a nice little.
Absolutely right. I thought about that.
And I realized that's part of it.
I'm going to go look up the syntax.
Waves, yeah.
But,
Bigger script or something.
yeah. And I know it wasn't going to stay there. Because I was just using it for
DevCon is a command line utility.
Oh, yeah, it's a command line utility as opposed to making a pure PowerShell.
Right, you would have to call the XE through.
Yeah. I have that utility on it. I was trying to get away from having anything other than pure PowerShell. But yes, I saw DevCon. And there's some issues with that too.
Okay.
I did have one, maybe this DevCon was the one I used. And it did work. So that's my fallback.
Are you're doing this on 2008 R2?
Actually,
2008?
2008 R2, running System Center 2012 with Data Protector. But that doesn't matter for the use. So that's my spiel. And sorry, what? I didn't see it for the WMI. That's what I did. I piped it in and did a gap number to see what was there, and I tried and all that stuff. But it was fun. Yeah, and I get to work on these things like an hour. Yeah. That's why I have to be very consistent in my code.
So you can remember when we went back.
Yeah. I mean, I started this probably back in July. I took 2 weeks vacation, and I come back. I've been working on it. I keep muddling around. So that was my main experience.
Cool. Anybody else have anything to share? No? If that's it, we'll call it a night. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
This was purely
The documentation on that DLL.
What's that?
Yeah, hot swap.
Yeah.
Bunny wrote that.
No, I like it. That's good. It's good.
Yeah, I used to tease the guys at work. I always come up with these John Nargang. They used to hot swap drives when they first made them. Hot swap and the server.
Yeah, hot swap. Actually, before anyone leaves, we're doing giveaway stuff.
What's that?
I love Windows 8. I never know what it's going to surprise me with next. I lost my ability to manage my network connection, so I can't drop my VPN.